how are you guys doing? It's March now, as you can see from the flowers, but it's also the season to try out for French art schools, and I thought I would make a video talking to you about entry exams to get into French art schools. For this video, it's only for first years, but I guess for other years that are trying out, there are some similarities that you can see. Some of you must probably be in the middle of submission, or some of you are trying to prepare to get into French art schools. So when this video comes out, I hope it's not going to be too late to talk about it. I am an art student in Paris in a school called École Nationale Supérieure des Arts Décoratifs, or you might know it as ENSAD or Art Déco. So obviously I am not a professional or a jury or anything talking about this, but at least I have gone through all the entry exams of different schools, so I know all the procedures and how it works. And if you're curious about how I ended up in a French art school, you can click up in the link in the description or in a button up somewhere to a video that I made talking about how I got into an art school in Paris. So in this video, I'm going to first talk about how entry exams will work in French art schools and then get to the actual tips that I can give you. And before we get into the video, if you are interested in going to a French art school but you don't really have a lot of information, or you don't understand some systems and you want to talk about it with someone, and you want to learn more about the system, I provide a one-on-one consultation just for you guys to answer all your questions about preparation, entry exams, portfolio, art school life, and everything that you want to know. And if you want, of course, we can also go through all your artworks and you can get some constructive feedback and advice. Just click on this link in the description to book your own personal meeting with me. So, how exams work. So the entry exams can be very different for each school, and also with the non-contact system, which I haven't been in when I took the tests, it's really hard to say. There's probably going to be some points where there are different stuff from what I tell you because of social distancing this year, but today I'll just focus on the general system of the entry exams, but I also hope you can integrate my advices to your experience too. So most entry exams consist of a home test, épreuve à domicile, and then a creative test, épreuve créative, and then also a writing exam, épreuve écrite, and finally the interview with the jury. Depending on the schools, there might be schools where there are no certain tests, and also with the social distancing system, it's quite tricky. Some schools require multiple selections where you have to be accepted in the first round to actually get to the second part of the exam. In that case, you'll probably have some form of home test, but there are also schools that do everything in 1 or 2 days without any selections until the final result. And some schools might leave out a particular test or even add one, or maybe they would mix two together in some cases. So it's really different, depends on the schools. The home test. So once you've submitted all your documents like your CV, letter of motivation, and your portfolio even, at a given date the school will come up with an exercise or like un sujet for you to do in usually a span of a few days. It's usually a bit less than a week, so basically like 4 or 5 days. This exercise that I'm talking about might be just like a keyword, or maybe it could be like an instruction that you have to be creative with. For a little info, ENSAD usually typically gives out only keywords for the home test, and basically during the given period of time you have to create a little project that you will submit to the school, and more details like quantity and format will probably be mentioned in the school website or wherever you get the exercise. Writing exam. So there are some schools that require this step and some that don't. It really depends on the schools, and even the form of this exam can vary. If I take my experience for example, ENSAD gave the candidates like 2 documents or artworks more like, and we had to choose one and write about it, like describing it and analyzing it and writing what we thought about it. And in another school I had to watch several documentaries, and at the end of it I had to come up with like a few keywords and write about that, and that was way complicated than my school. So yeah, those are examples. I cannot say all schools are like this, but this is just what I've been through. Creative exam. You will need to conceptualize an exercise given to you by the school and make a small project out of it by the materials that are either given to you by the school or that you are allowed to bring. Normally there is a list of what you can bring, so make sure to check that out on the websites. To do that, they usually give you 3 or 4 hours to actually come up with an idea, conceptualize it, and actually make it into something visual. Of course, it doesn't have to be the best quality since they're actually asking you to do something in 3 or 4 hours. The importance is that you have something creative creative and innovative to show. The interview. So now is the most important part to show or sell yourself. Ideally, your interview should be around 20 minutes. For the first half, you will be presenting all your portfolio works, and for the second half, it's usually, you know, a conversation with the jury. But you know, not everybody exactly ends in 20 minutes. Like, some juries might like your work and the interview might go longer than 20 minutes, but some of you might even get 7 minutes for the whole thing, like I had to in another school. Study a lot of references and use them. This goes for the writing exams, the interviews, and even your portfolios. It doesn't have to be your average Joe basic educational kind of, that typical art history, although it is of course good to have some basics to start off with. Knowing a lot about contemporary artists and designers and their work is really important for French art schools, it seems, because even after you get into the school, you are bombarded with references. You gotta know artists and designers usually, like in my opinion, from the start of the 20th century is not a bad start, but also basic art movements and even like films and books, all sorts of stuff like that. In writing exams, it's really good to have a lot of references because you can actually talk about some subjects in a very deeper level, so that you can give out more interesting examples and actually get into some profound detail. That's what the schools are looking for. And during the interview, it is possible for the jury to ask you questions like if you know some artists that have done similar things as you, in which artists that you were inspired by in some artworks, or simply if you know a reference that comes into their head. So look out for those. Knowing a lot about your domain can actually save your ass someday. If you link these references to your artworks even before the interview and talk about it briefly during it, you might even find yourself in a very interesting conversation with the jury. Write a script, then memorize it. So this advice really helped me a lot. Writing a script for your presentation might not be something very hard to think of, since you already need some pointers that you have to remind yourself or to have to talk about. But do you always memorize every single word of your presentations? I don't think so. Even though when I thought that I knew every detail of my script, my first entry exam to an art school was catastrophic. It was in a French region called Rennes. I was so nervous that a lot of the important points just evaporated in my head and just like left it fucking blank, and I was spluttering so much. I still ended up in the waiting list, but trust me when I felt so bad for being a foreigner. I actually don't know how comfortable French people might be in this case. Maybe they might not need this tip, not sure. It's probably gonna depend on the person. If you're a jittery French, this tip probably applies to you. So anyways, my next school interview was in NZ, and the day before my interview, I dedicated my whole last day to memorize the shit out of my script, word by word. I'm usually that kind of person who likes to do things naturally and not memorize anything to that extent. Even if I'm not a natural person at all, I am awkward as hell. It's probably an excuse for being lazy. But really, during the interview, I barely stuttered because I memorized the script so well, because the script was in my head like second nature, and I had really no problem just saying everything that I had memorized. I didn't miss anything that I wanted to say, and I said everything that I needed to say. So in all honesty, it really went so great. If you are a natural and can function well under high pressure, well, that's really great. You probably don't need this tip, but most people will still get nervous in this kind of situations, and memorizing everything actually helps a lot with communication. Write down a list of potential questions that could be asked by the jury and answer them. So after you've written your script, you can now work on your personal Q&A. The juries are going to ask you some questions for sure about your work, about yourself, and about what you think about certain stuff. And you don't want to catch yourself off guard to miss an opportunity to wow them. You can start by writing some questions that they might ask you about your work. For example, the choice of your materials, your colors, or how you made it, or the conception behind it. Be very precise about these questions. And if you have no idea what they might ask you about yourself or something else other than your work, you can start with some simple questions like, who is your favorite artist and why? What is the last exhibition you've seen? Or why do you want to come to this school? This is a typical one. What makes our school so special is an alternative. Bring as much as possible. Don't even think that only your portfolio in some binder will do the job at an interview. The jury would want to touch and feel your work and to see them in person. Bring all you can in a huge bag or wherever you're bringing everything. I've even seen a guy bring a whole ass wheelbarrow to the interview. It was great. And also think of bringing all your notebooks and sketchbooks to the interview. You can set them aside and the jury will just like pick them up and leaf through the pages while you talk about your work. If you're doing it online, I guess the alternative is to show them if you have time. The jury is also interested in how you work and how you process things and the process that you go through while creating something. So don't forget to take everything with you, even though you might not be 100% proud of everything. Speak loud and clear. For any circumstances or environment, you have to anticipate some noise. Whether it be an online video conference or just a room full of candidates right next to you trying to pass their own interviews, you need to speak loud and clear. If you're really lucky, you might get a closed off room without any distracting background noises, but you also have to anticipate some really loud places too, or bad connection if you are passing them online. Some of you who are like me might be very introvert and shy, and maybe you've got that thing where people don't always understand you from the get-go because you either mumble or you stutter or you talk too softly. In that case, you really have to try and engage with the jury with clear speech so that they understand what you're saying and stay concentrated. Don't be shy, you'll thank yourself later. Smile. I know this is the most cliche thing to say, I swear to God. I feel like a boomer. But don't forget to smile. You are there to impress people, and I know it can be really nerve-wracking when you're trying to present your work to some bunch of professionals and you might forget to smile. So just leave that in mind and project a positive vibe. You'll also feel a bit better when you're smiling, and you might also gain a bit of confidence and humor. I remember smiling for the whole 20 minutes when I was doing an interview for my school. Honestly, I can now say that my face was practically frozen, and when I got out of the interview, my cheeks hurt so bad for like a couple of hours, I swear to God. So that is it for my video today. I hope you guys enjoyed, and if you did, don't forget to leave a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel, of course. I know these are stressful times for those of you who are going to take the exam soon. I wish you all the best, and I'll see you in the next video. Bisous!